Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We'll bring you the latest from Lytton, where there has been some relief from a wildfire nearby, but crews continue their work as it does still threaten some homes. We're taking your calls as well. If you live in Lytton and surrounding areas, what is your situation and how are you feeling right now? Plus, we'll talk about the plan by the federal and provincial governments to purchase unsold condos in BC to turn into affordable housing. It was announced last week. It's facing backlash and being slammed as a developer bailout. We'd like to hear your thoughts. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. 15 homes are still under evacuation order, with more than a couple hundred under evacuation alert after the Saw Creek wildfire sparked Friday and forced people in more than 40 properties near the village to evacuate. That order has now been lifted. According to the BC Wildfire Service, fire activity did decrease overnight due to cooler temperatures and light winds. Today, though, temperatures are expected to be between the high 20s to low 30s, and relative humidity will be trending lower, meaning there is a potential for fire activity to increase throughout the day. And light winds are expected as well, with increased gusts in the afternoon. We're going to hear more from the BC Wildfire Service in a few moments. This all comes, though, as Lytton has been actively rebuilding from that deadly and devastating wildfire almost exactly 5 years ago now. On June 31st, 2021, a wildfire tore through Lytton, killing 2 people and destroying most of the village. Now, the Saw Creek wildfire that sparked Friday did happen on Friday, but Lytton Mayor Denise O'Connor told Daybreak Kamloops host Doug Herbert this morning that the latest wildfire is giving local residents flashbacks.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
A little bit of that, but really, I think what it was it was a test of our resiliency, and we passed with flying colors. People handled it very, very well.
We'd like to hear from you now. If you live in Lytton and the surrounding region, tell us about your situation with regard to this wildfire. How are you feeling right now? You can call us, just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca, or if you're on TikTok with us, you can leave your comment there. Our CBC reporter Alana Kelly was in Lytton covering this fire over the past 2 days, and Alana joins us now. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Michelle.
Well, what stands out for you after seeing this fire and what took place over the weekend, Alana?
Yeah, there was significantly less of fire activity yesterday when I was there, and there was some plumes of smoke on the hillside, but much less than I saw on a Saturday. When I looked up, I could see some flames as well, but I'm going to set the scene for you for where I was standing. There was helicopters going into the river, flying over above where I was and doing really quick work on this fire, and they were going back and forth all day and all day Saturday, so I'm sure they're pretty exhausted. There was about 9 helicopters there yesterday, and my understanding is there's 10 there today. And to talk about this region, it's really tinder dry. It is hot and windy, so things can change drastically at any moment. And I did speak with the mayor, and she said that she is also feeling positive about the conditions that we're seeing.
Weather has a huge part to do with it, and as I mentioned, the wind is down a lot from yesterday and the day before, but also the resources that are on it are incredible. We have huge resources. BC Wildfire and other fire crews in the area are on it. We have other communities have sent in water tenders and that sort of thing, which is we're so appreciative of, and the helicopter support. They dip in the river and they dump the water on the fire. So lots of air support, lots of crews on the ground. I'm feeling pretty confident.
And of course, a great sign was having some of those properties on evacuation and alert and order reduced and people being able to return home yesterday. Some people, that's also a really positive sign.
Absolutely. Can you tell us about the work that was being done near the homes to protect them?
Lytton First Nation had people working on the ground around the homes where the fire was burning. And one of the things that's interesting is they said that it's really difficult to get water into this area. So they had these big water tank trucks show up in this community. And what they were doing was they were putting a hose into these trucks and then feeding that onto the top of people's homes where there were sprinklers set up. And we've seen this in other communities like Logan Lake, and it's fire smarting these properties. Ground crews were also going around and pruning trees. So what that means is they're cutting off those lower branches so that the fire can't spread quickly if it comes back down that hillside. They're also making sure that the trees are spread out far enough. That's also fire mitigation and fire smarting that we've seen being done around the province. But sadly, we did hear from a family. They told us at CBC News that their uncle's home was lost in this fire.
Okay, that is sad to hear. And of course, we know what happened in 2021 when just about the whole village was wiped out by that wildfire. You did report from that area in 2021. Can you compare the two for us? How were things different?
Yeah, what really stands out for me, Michelle, is just the sheer size of the fires back then to now. So I'm going to put it into perspective a little bit. I covered the Tremont Creek wildfire, which was burning in Ashcroft, and that wildfire in 2021 was about 30,000 hectares. Now that fire in Lytton in 2021, as you mentioned, that devastating and deadly fire was at about 83,000 hectares. The one we're talking about today is roughly 700 hectares. So it's really that size difference. And when I drove up and I saw the fire, it was obviously noticeably different, but things can change rapidly in this area. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is the temperature. So I drove through Lytton the day before that fire and it was 49.6 degrees. It was so hot. I remember I put my car keys on the hood of my vehicle and I went to pick them up and my hand almost burnt from the metal. That's how hot it was. When I was in Lytton over the weekend, it was about mid 20 to high 20. So again, we're not seeing that same heat that we saw in 2021. So also, when I drove through the canyon in 2021, that visual is stuck with me of the canyon walls just glowing and with orange because of the fire and how quickly it was spreading. And it was almost claustrophobic to be there because you couldn't see in front of you and the smoke was so heavy, it was difficult to breathe. I remember that there was chunks of ash, not pieces, like full chunks of ash falling on my vehicle. So very different from what I saw this weekend, but nonetheless, for the people who live there, they told me that this is causing them anxiety and dread, and it's really a feeling of deja vu. And here we go again with this fire.
Yeah, that's right. And to think that, we're just about at 5 years and that rebuilding is still happening, right? It's still just ramping up. Can you tell us about how it's going?
Yeah, the mayor is actually really proud of the work that's been done and the rebuilding that's happening and the planning that is going on. It's still very much underway. And the homes that were rebuilt, they were done with a fire-resistant material. And so that was really interesting to see that firsthand. But there's not even a grocery store in this community. And so there are plans for that to be built. There's plans for an outdoor pool, a museum, a community hub. And the mayor shared some exciting news with me. She's hoping that the Legion will actually be open later this year.
Alana, thank you so much. Really good to have you reporting over the weekend and that context as well from having covered the fire in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you.
CBC reporter Alana Kelly, who did spend the weekend in Lytton to cover the Saw Creek wildfire that is burning 3 kilometers south of Lytton. We are taking your calls. If you do live in Lytton or in the surrounding region, you can let us know, what this weekend has been like. What is your situation? And how are you feeling as the community is still in the midst of rebuilding following the 2021 devastating wildfire? You can call us 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. Joining me now is Paula Wallbauer, who is the BC Wildfire Service spokesperson and joins me on the line. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a very busy day. It has been a busy weekend. Can you tell us the latest on the Saw Creek fire?
Absolutely. So are at 704 hectares, and this wildfire is still out of control. Currently, the staffing that we have on the ground, we have 150 BC wildfire personnel, as well as Lytton Fire Rescue. We have 53 structure protection personnel and 10 helicopters supporting this incident, and an incident management team has been assigned to the incident.
And I know weather has really been helpful over the last day and overnight. What does it look like for today and the coming hours?
Sure. So today we are definitely seeing those light northeast winds, which is they're expected today, with perhaps some increased gusts this afternoon. So that's something that we'll definitely keep our eye on. The temperatures have been lower. Today we're expecting that high 20s to low 30s in the temperature. So a slight uptick in temperatures, and definitely something later in this afternoon with possible increased winds and gusty winds that our crews will be watching on the ground to ensure their safety to be so on the mountain.
What's the priority right now for the 150 BC wildfire personnel that's there?
Certainly our crews have our priority on our structures and ensuring our structure protection of those structures that may be at risk. So that's a high priority. That structure defense has been up and tested and is ready to go at any time that it would need to be deployed. We also have 2 watersheds that are a high priority for this area and for those that live here in this zone.
And Paula, we heard from a reporter who had heard of one structure that had been destroyed. What can you tell us about any homes or anything like that have been affected?
I actually can't speak to any structures that may have been impacted. That would be for the Lytton village of Lytton or the TNRD to be able to speak to those. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. We'll get those details from them. And in terms of preparation, we had the West Kelowna, the wildfire there last week at Calamar Lake Park, and West Kelowna Fire took the lead on that. But can you tell me a bit about how the BC Wildfire Service is preparing for this season?
I think let's see, I might not be able to speak, we are prepared. BC Wildfire sets up our preparedness level. That's not something that I would necessarily speak to as an information on an incident management team. I'm sorry. I would defer to provincial to speak to that.
Okay, on preparation. And what about other fires that we should know about right now?
At the moment, I would say this is the only wildfire that has an incident management team assigned to it. And of course, if anyone is looking for more information on what's going on in the province or on this wildfire, they can always check our BC Wildfire app to access that information real time.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is Paula Wallbauer, who's a fire information officer with the BC Wildfire Service. And we're taking your calls. If you do live in Lytton or in the surrounding areas, you can let us know just your thoughts, your situation. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Again, 604-669-3733. Dean Adams is a resident of Lytton whose home was destroyed in the 2021 wildfire, and he spoke to the CBC's Alana Kelly about how he's doing.
I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling ready to go. I'm not as rushed as I was the last time. This time is a lot calmer. It's a lot easier to deal with, but it's something you got to be ready for. That morning it was very windy and all day long, and then the evening came and it was the same situation. The wind was coming from the south and going north, and it was gusting up to about 80 kilometers an hour at times. And it was the 5 o'clock news. I always sit down and watch that, so I sat down. I watched for a couple minutes, the phone rang and my sister was on the phone. She said, did you know there's a fire? I said, no, and she said, look out your window. And when I looked out just up here, it was just a mushroom of smoke. And I had no idea what it was all about and where it started. And all she told me on the phone is just get some stuff packed up, what you need, and ready to go. So that that was my main thing, priority, was to get things that I didn't get before, because the last fire we had 5 years ago, I grabbed absolutely nothing other than my stuff out of my glass cabinet. I got all my papers, medication, important stuff, all my jewelry, all gold pan, all in the truck and ready to go. I have 2 vehicles, and one of them's got all my power tools in it, and then I took it down and I parked it down where it's easier to get to and that. But I just had everything ready, packed and ready to go. But it was so strange when a fire started, and it was the same time as 5 years ago. It was at 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and it was 10 days away from June 30th of 5 years, and it was really strange to have another fire coming back to Lytton. It's like we're starting all over again, like to go through it again, and the feeling is really weird.
That's Dean Adams, who's a resident of Lytton. Now, Thompson-Nicola Regional District Director Tricia Thorpe says the fire has put the community on edge, but the response to this wildfire is much different than in 2021.
It's a very big deal. It hits the TNRD, it hits First Nations, and it hits Village of Lytton, exactly like what happened in 2021. So I think that the community is, they're prepared as much as they can be, but I think that there's a level of anxiety. But I also see a level of cooperation too that we maybe didn't have in 21. There's a little bit more time. I see different groups reaching out to each other to share information, to aid each other. And I think that I'm playing Pollyanna, but I always try to find something positive in a situation. And I think that is the positive, is we're more prepared and we're more of a cohesive unit going into this one.
That is Tricia Thorpe, who's the director of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. It's 12:23 now. This is BC Today. And we have been taking your calls and your emails over the last week about wildfire prevention and preparedness. Karen wrote us this email. I recalled my uncle telling me last year that in France, where he lives, the vegetation and brush removal is mandatory, and property owners will receive steep fines and possibly even jail time if inaction leads to others' property being damaged. This makes it very motivating for the community to stay prepared. In BC, there are guidelines, but they aren't enforced. I would imagine that taking a more proactive stance would keep all residents safer. And this email from Lake Country in the Okanagan. This morning, I watched a neighbor plant a row of about 25 cedar trees. We are currently in a drought. Lake levels are low, and even nearby farmers are struggling with water availability for crops. Many established cedars are already stressed or dead, and they represent a real fire concern during dry seasons. Despite that, there appears to be no local preventative measures restricting the planting of high water use hedges like cedars. Last year, I spoke with a fire chief and was told there is no authority to require the removal of vegetation that could increase fire risk, and that it falls outside bylaw enforcement. This leaves me with a difficult question. How do we encourage or legislate basic common sense when individual choices may increase the risk for the wider community? And another email now on the wildfire situation. Nina writes, isn't the definition of insanity to do the same thing and expect different results? The earth is warming and Lytton's location is doomed. Shouldn't we rebuild in a different place instead of wasting resources and efforts? Thank you very much. BC Today at cbc.ca. 12:25 now. You're with BC Today. Last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier David Eby made a housing announcement. And here's the Prime Minister last week.
We're pleased to announce that Canada and British Columbia have reached a landmark new agreement to help build more homes, to bring down housing costs, and modernize infrastructure across the province. We'll do this by working together to reduce development charges. We will convert vacant condos into affordable housing, and we will invest in community infrastructure from schools and hospitals to public transit.
As Prime Minister Mark Carney announcing a new housing fund along with a plan to convert vacant condos into affordable housing. Now, Ottawa and the province will set up a multi-billion-dollar fund to expand housing infrastructure and lower development cost charges on multi-unit housing. They also announced a partnership between the province and the federal government to convert vacant condos in some areas and turn them into affordable homes. And that is as condo pre-sales have collapsed. Data from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation last month found that there were over 4,300 vacant complete condos sitting empty in Metro Vancouver. The plan, though, is facing backlash, including from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Take a listen.
Having created the housing bubble and now bursting that bubble, now they want to come and bail out the bankers and developers who profited from it. And this is another example of a tiny club of liberal elites, billionaires, and insiders getting rich by making hardworking Canadians poor. So I'm calling for the Carney condo bailout of developers and bankers to be cancelled.
That's Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre speaking this morning in Richmond. We'd like to hear from you. What do you think of the government's plan to purchase unsold condos and turn them into affordable housing? You can call us 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Our email is bctoday@cbc.ca, and you can also comment on our TikTok Live. We'll start this conversation now, but continue it throughout the next half hour as well. We'll take your calls then. Joining me now is Hassan Juma, who is a realtor with Oakwind Realty. Hi, welcome back, Hassan.
Thanks for having me.
What are your overall thoughts about this announcement, this plan specifically about the vacant condos?
Yeah, I think not extremely positive. I think overall, like was mentioned there, this is deemed as a developer bailout in many ways. Developers over constructed. I think there's a lot of consumers out there that are viewing this and saying, where's my bailout? Optically not very good. I think it's important to look at all sides of it in the sense that, yes, this could spur some construction development and it could protect some jobs out there. But, I think overall, we believe generally in free markets, and this is basically taking away from the free market and, having the government come in, step in and to save the big developers.
And, we have talked with you many times about those condos sitting vacant. Yet could developers simply lower their prices then so that they can compete in the current market as opposed to a few years ago?
So they could. I think ultimately what ends up happening is you get to a point where the developers just, enter receivership, they hit bankruptcies, they lose their funds, they lose the money, and the condos get sold off at a discount. And a lot of people are asking that question, why are we just not allowing that to happen? Mm-hmm. Let the market kind of take it where it will. And does that not in and of itself create affordable housing for people, first-time buyers to be able to purchase these units? So, it's a good overall question. Why not just allow the market to take care of itself?
What do you see, as you said, you look at it from different sides. What do you see as a potential upside to it?
Yeah, so there's two sides to every coin. I think 2,200 condos. It's a large chunk, but we have plenty more condos out there. I think from an upside perspective, we have to understand who the construction industry helps. It's not just money that's being put towards big developers and padding their pockets. Think about all the people working in construction, the trades, the electricians, the plumbers, the engineers, the people upgrading services. When construction grinds to a halt as it has right now, a lot of jobs are at stake too. So I think we do have to look at it from both sides, that injecting money into a faltering construction industry here in BC where it's so important to us, there is some upside there as well.
Have you ever seen anything like this plan before?
Only recently with what's happening in Ontario. So Ontario kind of led the way a little bit in the sense where they had their provincial government invest into, with a private equity firm, up to $1.3 billion. The provincial government over there, I think, seeded about 300 million. What's a little bit different, though, quite different, is in Ontario, that significant investment is coming from private equity, from private firms. Here, and this is a big issue for a lot of people, it's strictly government funds that are being poured into it.
Okay, we will open up our phone lines asking you, what do you think of this plan by the federal and provincial government to essentially purchase vacant, unsold BC condos and turn them into affordable housing? Our numbers again, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. My guest is Hassan Juma, who's a realtor with Oakwyn Realty. We'll take your calls coming up after this CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Hundreds of people pushed out of their homes by a wildfire in the Lytton area are returning home today. 15 homes remain under evacuation order, with about 200 downgraded to an alert. The fire is still listed as out of control, with 10 helicopters and about 150 firefighters involved. 3 prison guards at the Pacific Institute in Abbotsford had to be taken to hospital after being exposed to fentanyl during a random search. The guards' union says it happened June 11th when an inmate tried to destroy evidence by dispersing the drug. One of the officers required chest compressions on the way to the hospital. And a drug bust at a Surrey home in May has led to charges against one man and the deportation of 2 others. Officers found 16 kilograms of opium, along with cannabis, cocaine, heroin, and other drugs. A 24-year-old foreign national is in custody and facing trafficking and possession charges, while 2 others were removed from Canada by the Border Services Agency. And now the forecast on the North Coast, mainly cloudy this afternoon with a high of 14. Highs reaching 25 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, some sun and cloud with a high of 24. Highs getting close to 30 with sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, sunny with a high of 28. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, mainly sunny this afternoon with highs around 30 degrees. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Rob, thank you very much. It's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Now on to the FIFA World Cup. Soccer fans, new and old, are keenly watching one of the smallest participants in the FIFA World Cup. The small island nation of Capo Verde has done what most thought was unthinkable. The country earned 2 draws so far in the tournament, both against the previous tournament winners in Spain and Uruguay. Dina Livramento from Capo Verde via Langley told the early edition Stephen Quinn that seeing her home country compete in the World Cup has been very exciting.
I'm excited, and it's just so surreal feeling since yesterday. I was telling my daughter to pinch me to see if it was going or not.
What is it like to see your team? Well, first of all, when they tied Spain 0-0, I mean, that was, one of the top teams of this entire competition. And now here again, I mean, Uruguay, twice the World Cup winners, and tiny Capo Verde once again holds them to a draw.
Remember the first interview I mentioned that they were sharks, right? Tubarões azuis, right? So Tubarões, the symbolism behind that, the naming, so strength, perseverance, So, and they were swimming from Cape Verde Islands all the way here to show the world that what we're made of. We might be tiny, but don't underestimate tiny people. You know what I mean? Because they can thrive, like they can fight. And those boys, I believe in them from the very beginning.
Welcome back to BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks very much for joining us. We are asking you about the plan by the federal and provincial government to purchase unsold condos in parts of BC to turn into affordable housing. You can give us a call, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. And my guest is Hassan Juma, who's a realtor with Oakwind Realty. Perhaps I'll just ask you before I go to our callers, how do you think this might affect affordability, if that seems to be part of the announcement here?
So that's a really good question. I think, like we kind of mentioned, 2,200 condos. It's not a huge chunk of condos in terms of how many people out there require affordable housing. We don't know, where exactly these condos are going to be purchased from, which buildings, which cities. I do think that if I were to take a guess, they're going to be some of the lower price, some of the smaller condos that are going to be pulled off of the market. So I don't really see it having a major effect. I don't see it having a big effect on condo prices or anything along those lines either.
Right. So more than 4,300 are sitting vacant. The plan is to purchase up to 2,200 of those vacant condos.
And I think that number's light. I think 4,300 is light. It's a growing number. And depending on who you talk to, you see some much higher numbers stated out there as well.
Okay. All right. Good to have you with us, Hassan. Let's take some calls now. Again, our number is 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Fred is on the line from Dawson Creek. Hi there, Fred. Welcome.
Hello.
Yes, what are your thoughts about this plan?
Pardon me?
What are your thoughts about this plan to purchase unsold condos?
I think it's an absolute disgrace that they're taking taxpayers' money to bail these developers out. I mean, you're using the cloak of low-income housing or low. It's not. It's $1 million condos, and they're going to sell when the price is right. And these developers, they can lower the price, like everyone else has to. If you can't get a job or you can't do anything, you would take something for less. And to bail these guys out now after what they've gotten away with for the last 20 years is a criminal act.
Fred, thank you very much for the call. That's Fred joining us from Dawson Creek. And as you say, that comparison with Ontario, that uses private equity to prop up this project.
Yeah, more of a private equity thing in Ontario. And I think there's several reasons for that. But, you have a government that supports landlords over tenants a little bit more on the Ontario side. But yeah, can't disagree with the caller in many ways. Allow the market to take care of itself. A lot of consumers are feeling like, where's my bailout? Where's my money? What's helping me right now? So.
What are you hearing from potential buyers or those that have had their own condos that they've been trying to sell? What's it like for them right now?
Yeah, the sentiment has not been positive after this news. I think when I look at it too, like looking back to, what has been done for the consumers versus say the developers, we have a first-time home buyer rebate that was announced last year. I took several calls last year from people that had purchased pre-sales that were very excited when they heard the news because they thought, I'm completing this year, I'm struggling to complete, my value's down, my appraisals have come down. Great, I'm getting a 5% break. And in fact, that was not backdated for those purchasers. So would have been an excellent time to help out the consumer, the first-time buyer. We didn't see that. And then seeing what has happened now, transpired in the last few days, I think that has added to the angst amongst buyers and the sentiment out there.
Let's take another call. Al in Courtney now. Hi, Al. What do you think of this plan to purchase up to 2,200 condos to turn into affordable housing? Go ahead.
Hi. I would say it's a bailout for toxic loans that the banks took. So the big banks being bailed out and also the developers being bailed out. The alternative is to let the market correct on its own, let these developments tank and drive the prices down, or as they're doing to prop up the market by clearing out this unsold inventory.
Mm-hmm. Al, thank you so much for the call from Courtney. Jeff is up next now in Salmo. Hi, Jeff.
Hello, how are you?
I am fine. Thanks for calling. What are your thoughts about this plan?
I'm against it. I don't believe in bailouts, and I believe that I paid a lot of money to purchase my property, which I have rental units, and it makes it, as the economy gets worse and the prices come down, it makes it harder for me to rent out my property. I'd like to retire one day, And I just don't see how my tax dollars should go to help bail out developers and make property more affordable, which takes money out of my pocket.
And you're saying this from your perspective as a landlord.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people like myself that have invested in property, and why should I have high mortgage and I don't get a break? Nobody bails me out. Nobody's helping me out. I still have to pay my high mortgage with rent, and my rent it's getting harder and harder to rent my place out for more money. I'm taking less money than my mortgage, and by bailing out condos, it definitely makes my condo worth less.
Jeff, thank you very much for the call from Salmo. What about that when it comes to generally the market, what impact it might have?
Yeah, totally agree in the sense that there have been so many consumers over the last couple of years that have been put in very difficult positions, purchasing real estate, having the mortgage rates increase, having rental amounts come down. We're not talking about massive investors here either. We're maybe talking about an individual that has their first investment property and how much of a struggle it has been from them. So I can totally understand the caller's sentiment. In this case, a landlord having units, but not feeling like they're getting the help, and the help in this case being at that top level. And so that's a feeling out there that's kind of all over the place with no matter who you talk to regarding this program.
Some emails coming in now as we talk about this government plan to purchase up to 2,200 vacant unsold condo units in BC to turn into affordable housing. That was announced last week by Prime Minister Mark Carney. Premier David Eby was there as well. It's being criticized by some, including the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, as a bailout, amounting to a bailout for developers. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Allison writes from Victoria, is that affordable housing coming with a minimum income requirement, as does the vast majority of rent geared toward income affordable housing in the province of BC? For example, here in Victoria, recently constructed affordable housing rent geared to income affordable housing requires a minimum annual income of $50,000 to apply for a basic studio. These minimum income requirements leave out the vast majority of the working poor, persons with disabilities, and senior citizens on limited incomes. And Danny writes, as long as housing that also is released to tenants under BC Housing happens, I will get on the wait list. I pay 30% in rent, but live in social housing that is deteriorating and run by incompetent housing providers. I welcome this rental for seniors. And on that question of the affordable housing, the plan to turn these condos into affordable housing, here's what Andy Yan, director of SFU's City program, had to say.
Well, it means to me that it's kind of a whole series of questions that I think that it's certainly, one way of dealing with a growing stock of empty condos. But yet, I think that there are some really interesting questions and important questions to look at which condos would qualify, what are the characteristics of these condos, and where are these? And I think that this is really, again, a really sizable kind of question in terms of what kinds of empty condos would qualify for such a program.
That's Andy Yan, director of the City program at Simon Fraser University. And so, Hassan, questions around, you were wondering, what are the units that will qualify for this, will be chosen for this?
Yeah. And Andy brings up a good point. It really comes down to what type of units are these, where are they? We don't have too much of the parameters at this point. We're going to learn more in the fall. But yeah, I imagine a lot of these to be really, small condos, maybe not the type of condos that British Columbians do actually want to purchase and move into. So I feel like that's going to be a good chunk of these condos, but really hard to say, and really good points that were brought up in terms of minimum income requirements. You don't hear people talk about that when it comes to affordable housing. And yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the answers today, but we should receive those by September, October.
Can you give us more context on that minimum income requirement?
Yeah, so generally what we talk about with affordable housing is the maximum threshold. What's the maximum that you can have? And some of these minimums, it's not generally talked about that you have to actually hit these minimums. I don't know exactly, again, how it's going to play out with these condo conversions, depending on, which units there are. A lot of people are talking about, $3.2 billion, 2,200 condos. That's 1.4 million per condo. I think we have to really separate and understand that, that investment in the condos will be smaller. Again, I do think it's going to be the lower priced units, probably in the best areas, but so many questions. And I think that's also why a lot of British Columbians, they don't have the answers. So they're pretty upset about what's happening out there.
Love to hear from you on our open line, your thoughts and the questions that are being raised for you around this plan to purchase vacant condo units to turn into affordable housing. 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. And our next caller now is Shirley joining us from Chase. Hi, Shirley. Welcome to the show. What are your thoughts on this?
Hi there. I'm just thinking that any business or an individual should be doing their due diligence with anything financial. So expecting the government to bail them out of whatever the circumstances are is just preposterous, because the government is us, the taxpayers. And no, I'm heartily against this, a bailout.
Shirley, thank you very much for the call from Chase. So a lot of our callers saying, this is taxpayers' money being essentially being used as a bailout.
Yeah. And I think, again, I try to look at things from all sides, all angles. That's my approach. So there is a component of this in the sense that they are putting money towards bringing development cost charges down and making it easier.
That's the other part of it, right?
Yeah, to construct. And we don't know exactly how much of the money is going to go towards that and the condos. And I do think in many ways that can help British Columbians, as I spoke about, with the different jobs, all of the jobs that are tied to real estate and construction. They're quite vast. And right now, no one's building anything for the most part. Condo buildings, there's no project starts. And so we have construction workers out there that are finishing off jobs and they don't know where they're going to go. There's no work for them. So, if I'm trying to look at it from the bright side and from that angle, perhaps this can help incite some development. I say perhaps because our population is actually declining. So I don't know how that might work, but I'm trying to look at it from all sides.
And that announcement was part of what the Premier and the Prime Minister also announced, a $3 billion fund that would be split equally between Ottawa and BC to be used over the next 10 years. And that would be to build more housing enabling infrastructure and lower those fees, those development cost fees that developers pay to municipalities. So that was also announced last week. Our numbers again, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Still a lot of questions, as you heard Hassan talk about, and details that still need to be announced, need to be revealed. Marianne writes in Revelstoke, if the cost of the condos equals the price of building the condo units, I find no fault with the government creating affordable housing in this manner. It has the potential to integrate a variety of people for socialization in addition to making structures useful. There's no point in granting more building permits when we have empty units. Maybe studies should be done to determine what the housing needs truly are before granting building permits. Marjorie writes, my main question is about the math. We need affordable housing in BC, so is it cheaper for the government to buy these condos now than to build them from scratch and maybe have them in several years from now with everything that goes into it? Any thoughts on that, on how those costs might compare?
Both really great questions, really, really good questions. So what Marianne's referring to is replacement costs. Will the government be purchasing these units at, the cost to build, the replacement cost? And this is the crux of the whole thing, because we don't know what the government is going to pay. People are taking clues. So Prime Minister Carney said, developers don't want to sell at losses. That's not a line that people are really happy to hear. So they're wondering, okay, how big of a hit are the developers actually going to take? What sort of a deal is the government, hence us, going to get on these condos? And I think people are feeling it's not going to be as great a deal as you might think. And that's where the whole bailout term comes in. So really great points by those emails.
Thank you so much for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca is our address. Joan writes as well. Lots of emails coming in. Joan writes from Vancouver. The Carney announcement says nothing about addressing the need for all levels of government to allow and incentivize building the right kind of housing. Affordable, core worker and family livable housing. 20 years of a housing development system that relies on the investment market and the false premise of supply and demand to bring down the cost of housing in Metro Vancouver has brought us to the affordable housing crisis of today. I agree, there shouldn't be a bailout in terms of reducing permit fees, which would bring less return to the city. That's not where the problem lies, just the developer's false complaint. Stop building, period. There is excess supply on stream of the wrong kind of housing. And Matt writes from Coldstream, why not use the money that would be used to purchase the condos and bail out developers to build new condos that are purpose-built for low-cost housing? This would avoid bailing out developers and would create more jobs for BC residents. This could be a win-win. Thank you so much for your emails from Coldstream in Vancouver. We're taking them from anywhere in the province or even elsewhere. bctoday@cbc.ca. We have a call now from Whistler, and Derek is on the line. Hi, Derek.
Hi, how's it going?
Very well. How are you? What are your thoughts on this plan?
Well, here in Whistler, we have a lot of developers and bankers who own millions of dollars worth of housing. And I think the previous caller's comments about the government should use this money to build housing that is specific for their needs. And as the prices of those developers' housing come down and they go bankrupt and they have to sell it, that will keep on filling the need. Our need is so big that even with both of these sides, it would not be enough. And that brings up the question is that why do we need to supply subsidized housing in the first place? Why don't we fix the problem of why developers can't provide that type of housing in the first place? Development permits and design guidelines and municipality regulations make it almost impossible for developers to supply what the market wants and needs instead of just the basic BC building code.
Okay, Derek, thank you very much. So are developers meeting the need out there?
Yeah, so I think what he's referring to, there's a lot of red tape for developers to have to navigate to build certain types of housing.
We've heard this for years, yeah.
Yeah, and there's gaps in, I see it every day, like the gaps in certain types of housing for people to open up the family-friendly housing. So for example, you have downsizers that don't have large enough condos on one level that they can move into, and that would technically open up the family housing, the detached home, that would open it up for sale. We're not seeing a lot of that. So I just think there are just so many moving parts. And then referring back to one of the previous emailers, the reason why the government is not wanting to build out and start from scratch is they want to beat the time frame. So I guess they're looking at it from a sense of, okay, as costs continue to go up over the next 3 to 5 years, we saw it happen with developers building, what happened to their pro formas as they built out. The government's no different. So they're thinking, okay, we can pick these units up at a good price. We can put them into the market right now. So there's just so many moving parts. But needless to say, this is the story that everyone in the market is going to be watching as the details come out.
They sure are. They're talking about it, aren't they?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go.
Is that right?
Yeah. No matter what platform it is, whether it's, Instagram or YouTube, wherever it might be, phone calls, everyone's asking questions.
Okay. Jessica is next now on the line from Victoria with some thoughts on this. Hi, Jessica.
Hi. I'd like to make 3 quick points. Number one, we all knew that we had a surplus of housing for rich people in BC. And there was an announcement in January 2023 banning foreign ownership without residency. So we knew that too, and so did the developers. And they still built, even though they were warned. Secondly, in my area, Oak Bay, which is a wealthy area, which the developers had been cherry picking and building in, they built 80 units, so 20 buildings with 4 plexes each since 2023. Now, to my knowledge, currently 4 of the units, not the buildings, the units have sold. Oh. They were warned, and 3 enterprisers. The other thing that makes me upset about this is that we could use these billions of dollars as seed money to restore the National Cooperative Housing Program, which would be immune to a market that has clearly failed. It's clearly broken. None of it, even if the BC government and Mark Carney buy them up, will be truly affordable housing, and that's the kind we're short of.
The question there, in fact, our next caller, I think, has a comment as well on will this be affordable housing? And Loin is calling from Burnaby. Hi, Loin. Hi, Loin, are you there? Okay, I think we don't have Loin in Burnaby. Perhaps a last thought from last couple of minutes here, Hassan. Is this a good plan or not?
Yeah, I think I can't necessarily say whether it's a good plan or not until I see more details. Again, like what are the units? What are the unit sizes? Are these sellable units? Are they units that are desirable for the general public? So we do need to see more details. I think what we can say is everyone in the industry expected it to come. A lot of us were surprised that it took this long for us to see something like this. So there was an expectation that some form of this was going to come. I think a large chunk with the developers is, they saw a population grow and grow and grow. And so when you're building into that environment, it's easier to take risks. Developers took some risks, and you don't get into the development business if you're not taking risks. So they take the risks. Population starts to decline now. I think that's a really big thing. And just quickly on the foreign buyer ban, I think that gets adjusted by the end of this year into next year. I think there's going to be some adjustments and reopening that back up.
You see that happening?
I think so, in some sort of format, whether that's going to be that, foreigners can purchase pre-sales that they rent out for a period of time, some adjustments that's going to, again, try and spur that, construction industry, which again helps a lot of British Columbians when it comes to jobs.
Always good to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Love being here. Thanks.
Hassan Juma is a realtor with Oakwyn Realty. So many emails coming in too. Kim in Port Moody writes, I'm against the government purchasing unsold condos. Depending on the price they are getting them for. If they're able to negotiate a bulk price, it may turn out to be a cheaper option than the cost associated with ground up construction and be available now versus 3 to 5 years later. Thank you for your email as well. You can keep them coming. BC Today at cbc.ca.